Okay, so we continue with our notes on two-term polynomials, talking now about the sum or difference of cubes. A cube is a product that has three of the same factors. You're not going to know these as easily off the top of your head, so I'm only going to give you 7 of them that I kind of want you to be familiar with. So examples include 1, 1 times 1 times 1 equals 1. 8, 2 times 2 times 2 equals 8. In the same pattern, 27, 3 times 3 times 3. 64, 125, 216, 343, etc. So those first 7, just be familiar with those 7. And certainly you can use your calculator to find out if something's a cube. To find out if something's a cube on your calculator, you go to the math button, which is under the green button. And the fourth one down has a little 3 and then a square root symbol. That's cube root. So the fourth one down, excuse me, has a 3 and the radical symbol. So the fourth one down, you press that on your calculator. It should pop up as a little 3 and then a square root symbol, radical symbol, and then you punch in a number, 27, enter, and you get 3, which tells you that's 3 times 3 times 3. So you can use your calculator or you can just know these. In terms of variables, x to the 3rd power is a cube. X to the 6th power, x to the 9th power, x to the 12th power, etc. And hopefully you see the pattern that it's any variable with a power divisible by 3. So any variable with a power divisible by 3. Now you have to be careful, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Some variables are squares and cubes. So right now we're just going to talk about cubes, and then I'll talk in a little bit about the differentiation between those. To factor a sum or difference of cubes, we use these, again, I don't want to call them formulas, but these are kind of what you're going to fit it into, okay? So in general, if I am factoring these, I take the cube root of the a, so what multiplied 3 times gives me a to the 3rd, and that goes in the first spot. Same sign, what multiplied 3 times gives me b to the 3rd, and that goes here. Then I use that parentheses to get my second parentheses. So I'll square the first one, so a times a, change the sign, multiply these two, a times b, ab, and then square the last. B times b is b squared. So you're going to see a little pattern here, and I'm going to say this over and over, and you should be able to say it to yourself eventually. So in my difference, in my subtraction, cube of a to the 3rd is a, same sign, cube of b to the 3rd is b, and then use this. Square the first, a times a squared, change the sign, multiply them together, a times b, and then square the last, b squared. You'll notice that each answer only has 1 minus in it, so make sure that your answer only has 1 minus in it. So, let me show you an example, a few examples. X to the 3rd minus 27. So I have a difference of cubes. First parentheses, you're asking what times what times what gives you x to the 3rd power. And that's x, the cube root of it. Same sign. What times what gives you 27, or the cube root of 27, and that's 3. That's my first parentheses. The second parentheses comes from that. Square the first one. So x times x, x squared. Change the sign, so it was minus, now becomes plus. Multiply them together, x times 3, 3x, and then square the last. 3 times 3, always going to be positive, because when you square something, it comes up positive every time. So plus 9. That's your answer. Now, you want to be able to say that little saying to yourself, so in a little bit here, I'm going to repeat it several times so you can hear it. Okay, so another example. We have a sum of cubes. So what multiplied 3 times gives me x to the 12th? To get that on a power, we just simply divide it by 3. So x to the 4th power. Change the sign. So it was a plus. Same sign. Plus, so it's a plus. And then what is the cube root of 8? Or what times what gives you 8? And that's 2. Then I square the first. So x to the 4th times x to the 4th is x to the 8th. Change the sign. So it was a plus, it's now a minus. Multiply them together. X to the 4th times 2 is 2x to the 4th. And then square the last. 2 times 2, always positive, 4. That's my answer. Cubes are harder. You got to memorize that little saying. So again, it's cube root, same sign, cube root. Square the first, change the sign, multiply them, square the last. Cube of the first, same sign, cube of the last. Square the first, change the sign, multiply them, square the last. So let's use that again. Cube root of the first, so x to the 9th power, 27 divided by 3, same sign. Cube root of the last, so 4 y to the 6th. So again, cube root, what multiplied 3 times gives you that? And then square the first, x to the 9th times x to the 9th is x to the 18th. Change the sign, plus, multiply them together, so 4x to the 9th, y to the 6th, and square the last. 4y to the 6th times 4y to the 6th, 16y to the 12th. That's my answer. On my next one here, I'm going to move it down a little bit so I have some room. Cube root of the first. So 8x to the 3rd is 2x times 2x times 2x. Plus, same sign. Cube root of the second one is 5y to the 2nd. 5 times 5 times 5, and then divide the power by 3. Then, square the first. 2x times 2x, 4x squared. Change the sign, so it was plus, and now becomes minus. Multiply them together. 2x times 5y squared is 10xy squared. And then square the last. 5y squared times 5y squared, 25y to the 4th. Cube of the first, same sign, cube of the second. Square the first, change the sign, multiply them, square the last. Of course, we always have to refer to rule number 1, which is finding a common factor. Looking for the common factor, if there is one. So in this next example, there is, I can take out an x. X from x to the 4th leaves me x to the 3rd. Minus 216, and x from x would cancel. Then, in parentheses, I end up with a difference of cubes. So I have x. on the outside comes down. My first term, x to the third, is x times x times x, minus 216, 6 times 6 times 6. So the cube root. What am I multiplying 3 times to get that number or letter? Then I square the first, so x squared. Change the sign, becomes plus. Multiply them together. X times 6 is 6x. Square the last, positive 36. In my next one, same thing, common factor first. My common factor is 4x to the second. When I divide that in, 4x squared into 4x to the second gives me x to the 12th. 4's would cancel. 2 from the 14 leaves me 12. And then 108 divided by 4 is 27. And the x squareds would cancel. Then I have what times what is x to the 12th. And that's x to the 4th power. Same sign. 27. 3 times 3 times 3. Then I square the first. X to the 4th times x to the 4th is x to the 8th. Change the sign to minus. Multiply them together. X to the 4th times 3 is 3x to the 4th. And square the last. 3 times 3 is 9. And I'm done. Squares and cubes, cubes will not factor again unless it's a special circumstance, which we will not see. So once you have factored it into your sum or difference of cubes, you're done. You don't have to go any further on those. Okay? Here were a couple examples. If you were here, we would try these, but we're going to skip over those and go to this next part.